Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin and here are my quarterly reading stats. I am aware that we're in May currently and this video is a little bit late. I did film half of it in the beginning of April, but then I forgot to film the second half, so I decided to just redo the entire thing. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through a few stats from the first 3 months of the year, and that's a quarter of the year is 3 months. So I'm going to go through the stats for how my reading was in January, February, and March. So without further ado, let's start. So in the first 3 months of the year, I read a total of 40 books, which I am honestly a little bit surprised by. I did not expect to read 40 books in 3 months. Out of these 40 books, I read 21 as audiobooks and 18 as physical books and 12 as ebooks. You might have realized that that does not add up to 40 books, and the reason for that is I usually count books as 2 formats if I read a large portion of the book in 2 formats. So for example, something that I do if I have a physical book, sometimes I read the book physically at home and I listen to the audiobook when I am out taking a walk, ride the bus, something like that. So I listen to one book in 2 different ways. And I also have that with an ebook, that I can read the ebook or listen to it as an audiobook. So some of these books have 2 formats. So that's why it doesn't round up to 40. And then we're looking at where I got the books. 16 of the books were from my physical TBR. So for my physical TBR, these are the books from my physical TBR. So I read 16 books from my physical TBR, which feels really good that almost half the books that I read in the first 3 months, I already owned. I love that. And then I got 17 books online, and that can be from Scribd or Audible, for example. I got 3 books from the library, and 4 books that I read were ARCs, so advanced reader copies that I got from NetGalley. Now we're looking at the average page count, and this is something that is very weird to me. It has always been very weird to me to look at because it's never the amount that I think it is. In January, the average amount of pages that I read was 306 pages, which is kind of short. I would say that the reason why it's 306 is because I read quite a few mangas in January, and mangas are usually below 200 pages long, so I think that's why. But that wouldn't be an excuse for the next month, which is February. My average reading in page-wise for February is 204. That's over 100 pages less than January. And like 204 pages as an average page number for a reading month. And I started thinking, like, what did I do in February that made the book so short? And I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I think, again, I read a lot of mangas. So I assume that's one reason. And I know that I read a former favorite book, or it's still a favorite book, but that I read last year that is, I think, 30 pages long. So that could also be one reason for it. And I didn't read a lot of books over 400 pages. So, but yeah, 204 is so low. Like, I'm still surprised by that. And the next we have is March, which has a page number that I'm more okay with. And this I feel is more expected for all months, honestly. It's 343 pages. I would say, like, if someone would ask me how many pages I read in, average in a month, all year, I would say 350 probably. And this is almost 350, and it's the only one out of these 3 months that is almost 350. The other 2 were pretty far off. The next category I want to go through is countries. So I wanted to go through countries in order of visit. And so I visited 15 countries in total, and the way that I count this is setting. So if a book is set in this country, even for a short time, I count it. So the 15 countries that I visited are Japan, China, the UK, Germany, Poland, the US, the Netherlands, Sweden, Italy, Sudan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Canada, and Ireland. So I am very happy about that. And a big reason for that is, of course, my Globetrotter-a-thon, readathon. So I hosted a readathon in March that was very like travel based. You got points for traveling the world, reading books from around the world and set in different countries and different continents. So that helped me with that one. The next category I want to go through is genres. And it should not come as a surprise to anyone that the genre that I read the most is romance, with 20 books out of 40. So 50% of all the books that I read the first 3 months of 2022 was romance books. I'm not mad about that. The next most read genre is a tie on 5 books each, between fantasy and historical. So we have number 1 at 20 books, and then the 2 runner-ups are 5 books. That's a big gap. But then we have my second favorite genre, sci-fi, with 3 books. And then the last 2 genres that I have read are literary fiction as well as murder mystery. And both of those are on 2 books. So now I wanted to go through the stars that I have given out. And weirdly enough for myself, I have a different rating system this year than I have ever done before. Particularly, I do half stars, but I don't write that I have half stars. I have done that for a few books. I have started writing that it's half stars now, but for the entire year I have thought of the rating of the book as with a half star, even though I haven't written it down anywhere, not even in my reading journal, where it would have been good if I had written it down, but I didn't because I didn't think about that. But the way that I rate currently is still 1 star is 1 star. If it's 1.5 or 2 stars, it's 2 stars. If it's 2.5 or 3 stars, it's 3 stars. If it's 3.5, 4, or 4.5, it's 4. It has to be a solid 5 star to get 5 stars. And that's the reason I have a lot of 4 stars. A lot of books with 4 stars, because they are 3.5, 4, or 4.5. That's the reason there are so many 4 stars. All of the 4.5 books are 4 stars. Had I rated this year the way that I rated last year, I would have had a lot more 5 stars and a lot less 4 stars. Because the amount of 5 stars I have 2022 are 4 books. I only have 4 books that are 5 stars. And I wanted to quickly go through what books got 5 stars. The first book that got 5 stars is The Kiss Quotient. I just absolutely adore this book. It was so good. It was absolutely brilliant. I absolutely loved this. I thought the characters were really great. I loved the whole, like, the setup between them, and just them individually and together I thought were really great. The next book is kind of cheating in a way because it's a reread, and it's Tänk dig att fly. This is so amazing in my opinion. It's extremely short. I don't even think this is 30 pages long. It's not 30 pages long, it's 27 pages long, so it's extremely short for a hardcover. But this is a children's fiction book. It doesn't have an English translation as of today. It was originally written in Dutch. It's from the Netherlands by Dutch authors, and it's the one that I read is translated to Swedish. And it's kind of like, imagine there's a war and you're on the run, and it's following this young girl who everything that she knows is in ruins, and she has to kind of like make sense of everything, and there's no real plot to it. It's all, you know, hypothetical in a way. That imagine your hometown is destroyed. The school that you went to, it's empty now, and all of the tables are on the floor, and it's, you know, it's completely destroyed. Bombs, and, you know, and in order for you to survive you have to go to somewhere else, and some people are welcoming and some people would rather you left and went somewhere else. and it's kind of like a refugee story, but it's told to children, which makes it, in my opinion, a lot more impactful, because you take this huge issue that a lot of people today go through and you make it accessible to children. And I feel like every kid or every family with kids should have this book so that it can talk about those issues. Like, yeah, we have people who are immigrants, we have people who are refugees, and if you want to understand them more, here you can read this just to get an understanding. It's 27 pages long. It doesn't take you that long to read it, but I think everyone should read it, at least. The next book I gave 5 stars is Head Over Heels. This book, oh my god, this book. I didn't own it when I read it. I read it entirely as an audiobook, but thanks to my book buying ban card drawing thing, I get to draw a card if I complete my TBR, CTBR, and one of those prompts that I got was to buy a book that I had previously loved, so I bought this book. And this was so good. This was so good. And I read this in February for the Olympics-a-thon because it actually deals with the Olympics. And I'm just, this was so good, and it was nothing like I expected it to be. I know that it had to do with like these gymnasts. Our main character is a former gymnast who, due to an accident, due to an injury, she had to end that career, and she ended up very depressed and suffering from mental illnesses, just a mental breakdown kind of, because everything that she knew, everything she worked so hard for, was gone in an instant. And she was replaced by all these other gymnasts who weren't injured, and her career was over, and she didn't know, what am I gonna do with my life now that I don't have this? And she kind of gets offered a job by another former gymnast, and she accepts, and together they train this young girl to become better as a gymnast. And I was excited about this because I thought that this was gonna be a sports romance, that this was gonna be, like that kind of thing, like a romance between these two coaches. When I talked about this book in my Olympics-a-thon TBR video, I thought that he was her coach. So our main character, called Avery, she was the one who was injured. I thought that she got the call to become an Olympian athlete again, but she was called to coach an aspiring gymnast. So I thought that this was going to be like this gymnast girl and a romance between her and her coach, which it's not. So when I started reading it, and I realized that, okay, so it's the romance between her and her colleague, and as they together coach this young girl. And the reason that I love this so much is not because of the romance. I adore this book because of the way that it kind of comments on and discusses issues in the sporting world, which I find really, really good. I find that like it's so important. Just, so important, all of those discussions that they have. Mental illnesses in sports, that you push yourself so hard to win a gold medal, and what happens when you win a gold medal? You're not satisfied. You want to win another gold medal. And what happens if you don't win the gold medal? You get depressed because everything you worked for, you didn't get it. And kind of discusses that, that anxiety for, like performance anxiety, that you are pushing yourself so hard to achieve something that not a lot of people can achieve to start with. And you put yourself on a very kind of impossible standard, or very, difficult standard to hold yourself up to. And also this has to do with sexual abuse and sexual harassment within the gymnast world. I find also very, very important. After reading this, there came out news in Sweden where they talked about how previous gymnasts in Sweden have been sexually harassed and abused by coaches and people in like the coaching team. And so I feel like this was just such a good book to read as someone who loves sports. And the romance, I enjoy the romance, but the reason that I adore this book and why I got 5 stars is because of how it dealt with issues in the sporting world. and how it dealt with athletes and mental health for athletes. If you enjoy those things, I would recommend this. I absolutely love it. And the last book that I gave 5 stars is Let's Talk About Love, which I read for an Asexual Reads Asexual Books Part 2. And I did really love this. I think, like, you can see how much I tabbed. Everything that I tabbed has to do with asexuality, or most of it has to do with asexuality. And I'm just really happy that this book exists, with the representation that it gives and the discussions that it gives on matters of sexuality and asexuality in particular. I also really loved the main character and her personality. She's very goofy and very, like, she makes fun of a lot of things. And I understand a lot of people don't like her because of her personality. But I thought it was really, like, refreshing. So I did really enjoy it. And I thought the romance was also really cute. And just the whole thing with what it's like to date as an asexual person. And she is asexual and she's biromantic asexual. And she developed a crush on this guy that she's working with at the library. And he likes her back, and she has to kind of struggle with, how am I supposed to tell him that I'm asexual and that I don't want sex in a relationship. She's struggling with that a lot before they even start dating. And that's, you know, I relate a lot to this book. So that's why I gave it 5 stars. So as I said, out of the 40 books that I read, 4 books got 5 stars. And the amount of books that got 4 stars, 19. Almost half the books I read got 4 stars, because they were even 3.5, 4, or 4.5 books. And like I said, had I rated books the way that I did last year, I wouldn't have 4 5-star books. I would have probably more like 10, over 10 probably as well. There were a lot of books that I read this year that I feel like I want to give it 5 stars, but I can't give it 5 stars. And I should also say that the reason I'm a lot more hard on books, why I don't do 4.5 as 5 stars, is because I have, in my reading journal, I have a spread specifically for the 5-star books of 2022. And I look at a book and I say, like, I want to give this 5 stars. Is this a book, then, I ask myself, that I would like to print a copy of the cover of and glue onto that spread to say that it's one of the 5-star books of 2022? If the answer is no, I give it 4.5. If the answer is yes, I give it 5 stars. So I'm sorry for any change in the frame. My battery died, so I had to switch it. As I said, I got 19 4-star books this year and 13 3-star books. And now it's a little bit more sad because I got 3 books that are 2 stars. And then I don't have any 1-star book, but I have 1 unrated. And the reason that I left 1 book unrated is because it's a non-fiction book and it's kind of like a memoir. And because of that, I felt like I don't want to rate this because it's someone's life. And I felt really bad about rating someone's life. So that's why I didn't give it any stars. And then we're at the last category of stats, which is the longest versus shortest book of each month. So in January, the longest book that I read was The Poppy War, which is 622 pages long. And the shortest book I read was Cherie, My Destiny, at 147 pages long. So a very big difference. So with a book over 600 pages, the average was still 306. And then we move on to February. The longest book I read in February was Frostheart, that is 439 pages long. And the shortest book that I read was Tänk dig att fly, but it was barely 30 pages long. Also a big gap. And in March, the longest book that I read was The Wall of Winnipeg, with 665 pages. And the shortest book was Makeda, Queen of Sheba, at 50. Again, a big difference in length, page length. So those were all of the categories for this quarter stats. Now we'll see you next time for the second round of quarter stats for April, May, and June. So you can expect that video sometime in July, hopefully. But I will see you next time. Good reading. Bye.